Hey, what's up, guys? Hey, hey, everyone. Don't know what that was. I'm drinking ginger tea. Do you see this back here? That's going to be a little record nook. I know we had the record player set up in Atlanta, and I would intro everything with a record player. We're going to bring that back. I have found so many records. I showed you guys. Oh, shoot. I still have to go to the store because I have multiple records that I tried to save. I need to do that today. But, anyways, there'll be a little record player back here. And a lot of the songs will hopefully be deep enough cuts that they won't trigger anything on the YouTubes. But yeah, I got my nails done. Are they cute? They're kind of giving seashell, but not in a fun millennial way and kind of like a granny way. But that's my fault. I knew it was a risk, but anyways. So, today I want to talk about something that's really interesting. In light of a lot of discourse around Black Americanness as a person that's now living in London, I feel like it would be really interesting to share just some thoughts. Um, I think there's a lot of disparity between the connection and the productivity of dialogue between Black Americans and Black people in the UK. I kind of sit in a weird slash unique place because I have a migrant experience, being that my family lived in Jamaica until I was 9. And so I have trouble landing neatly in the Black American category, even though I am a Black person born in America. I just didn't grow up with a lot of the cultural references and experiences of Black Americanness, so I had to learn a lot of that. And these things I've come to feel deeply protective over and love and enjoy. I love Black American culture. It is a culture for people in the UK that keep saying Black people don't have a culture there. That is 100% false. I think it's strange that you would turn to people that were enslaved and ripped out of their own contexts by force and shame them for not having connection to their heritage. Um, but yeah, so it's really interesting. I think also Black people in the UK here have a passivity. Maybe that's not the right word because I don't want to be offensive, and I do think in addressing topics like this, there's going to be blind spots and things that I don't cover and things that I get wrong. So please, any Black American or Black person in the UK or any Black person in general, please, I am welcoming knowledge and insight here that's productive and respectful. It's something that I'm thinking through and processing. So this is not a final thesis, and I don't want to feel um, like I'm bashing any one side. I just am trying to put conversations together to make sense of them in my own way, and then maybe those things will help you make sense of things in your own way or not. But anyways, I think the Black British community here, because they don't deal with as direct of a impact from something like slavery, I don't think they are as defensive or need to be as protective of cultural preservation. A lot of Black people in the UK are also migrant, which is a part of the reason why I wanted to come here, is to experience what it's like to be in a country where Blackness and migrancy is very synonymous. And so they have a connection to their roots outside of the UK, some to varying degrees. Some people are one generation removed, some people are four generations removed. And so the more and more removed you are, the less those things can kind of carry on. But either way, people have a sense of orientation to somewhere else. And so, in that way, I think the onus and the desire for the UK to fulfill their satisfaction in a weird way is different. Like, Americans are dogmatic about the way that they approach identity in America because America is their home. And I think people in the UK don't get that. Like, when a black person says they're American, they are actually American. Like, multiple generations of their families probably been in America. And again, you cannot shame a culture, a group of people for not having connection to a heritage that they were stripped of. Um, Maybe you can be helpful, like maybe you can ask questions, and if there's connections, if you're from a specific village in Kenya and someone has Kenyan roots, like maybe you can have a discourse. But instead, it's like something that is seen as very like, oh, you're less than us because you don't know where you really came from. And I think people from the UK don't really understand why that is set up in that way, and that Black American culture is a culture and is an orientation within itself. Um, yeah, I think there's also like a lot of respectability politics that can come into play. Like, I've had a cousin ask me like questions around how Black people show up, and I think though the questions were earnest, I think the reality is that, again, it goes back to kind of what I said about passivity, where it's like people that have a sense of home elsewhere, they're not going to put as much of the onus for the country that they're presently in to satisfy all of their needs and to give them the respect that they think they deserve. I think a lot of ways, like, whiteness is still a really dominant culture in the UK. And I feel like, though there's a massive underbelly of like communities of color that are here, I have heard from people here that it is on a grand scale, like the representation for that history here, or like the recognition of that history here, is very much not prevalent. Like it's not as full as it should be. And I think we can say that about the States, but I think it's leaps ahead in terms of that category than here in the UK. Um, I think also like people in the UK are still within a European context. And so traveling to places like the States, traveling to other Black dominant countries, to Africa, to the Caribbean, it's expensive. And so a lot of people like the UK is their only context, and like I think that is really interesting as well because there's a sense of like a new identity that has to be formed, because even though there is a recognition of where you come from, not everyone has the privilege of having like a direct connection to go back and forth to that place and to experience it in a way. And so I think like there is a intensity maybe because of that to people like really wanting to hold on to what they have left. They are in the colonizer's land, like, and that is a tension. I feel that tension just as a visitor. And so I can only imagine like people that have been here, what they, yeah, how layered it is to like make sense of identity. And I think it's just a really fascinating thing. And again, it's one of the key reasons that I chose to study in London, was to have access to more conversations around Blackness and migrancy. And it's like any person from the Caribbean, especially Jamaica, that I meet that has not been back to Jamaica ever, I just want to be like, why? Like, this country needs to be funding that. Like, y'all need to have like remigratory trips for people that, came over here on Windrush, which is sort of like the big Caribbean historical piece where a lot of Jamaicans came to the UK. I believe this was in the 1940s, 50s. I'll look that up. But basically, it was when a bunch of ships not just one, came over, and a lot of Jamaicans moved here, and then they were promised citizenship, and then a few years later they revoked that and basically made it so like you had to have grandparents from here in order to gain citizenship. Very messy, very weird history. And I think though Jamaicans are here, like just like in a lot of major cities, gentrification is pushing a lot of these communities out. And it's very obvious that like this country still works similarly to the US, similar to a lot of countries that are not um, black dominated. They work in favor of classism, and classism is very intertwined with race. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's been really interesting to observe. It is weird to be in a place where you like, I don't really know whose hood I'm in. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know where I'm at. And I mean that in the sense of like when I'm in Atlanta, I know if I go to Buckhead, what that means. I know if I'm in Decatur, what that means. I know if I'm in Conyers, what that means. I know if I go north, what that means. It's like here, I, I'm struggling a little bit because I'm like, and it feels a little mixed up. It, I'm sure there are your parts that you gonna know whose hood you in, and I mean that with the utmost respect. I mean that with the utmost respect. This is not shade at all. I respect the hood, and so it's just like you just got to know where you at. And when you're from another country and you don't have the context, I'm like, I could be like, hee hee ha ha, and it's some racist white people just waiting at the door. And so it would be nice to get a little bit more insight. And I'm learning like what different neighborhoods vibes are, and like where I should feel safe and, comforted as a black person, and where I gotta kind of watch my back. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, it's been a wild ride. I think there's so much more that I can say about this, but I'll stop here. Um, because it's just something that I'm still processing, and like I think there's so many different ways to go about this, and it would be nice if over time like this could be more of a conversation with someone that's based here and someone that's based in the US. Again, I feel like I'm kind of oriented between worlds, and so I don't always feel the most qualified to talk about the history of Black Americans, and I don't feel qualified, of course, to talk about the history of Black Londoners. Um, and in some ways, I don't always feel qualified to talk about Jamaican history. So it's just a nice little slur of identities going on. But I do think it positions me to see things from maybe different angles than one person is seeing. But again, I'm not immune to blind spots. And so, anyways, I think that's all. See ya.